Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV with me, Romeo Busiku. Despite the increasing numbers of COVID-19 now kept at 39,314, the government or the Ministry of Health still do not have a strategy on the mass immunization or vaccination if that COVID-19 vaccine comes to Uganda in May. So we do have, Allana Kembabazi, the Manager Right to Health at the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. She's not alone. We also do have Dr. Grace Nambatya. She is the Director Research Natural Chemotherapeutics Research Center. Grace is going to be expounding on the release of a COVID-19 treatment drug yesterday by the President of Uganda, that is Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, at Mulago Hospital. What is the efficacy of this treatment drug? It's not a vaccine. Yes, they're just simply calling it a drug, a treatment drug. If it is a vaccine, you would have other countries clamoring for the same, saying, please give us a share. But then they're saying it is a treatment drug. It's going to be experimented on 124 patients within Uganda who are grappling with COVID-19. So if these patients show improvement when it comes to warding off the harmful complications of COVID-19, then we might see a realization of a full mass vaccination campaign or treatment campaign. It's no vaccination, but mass treatment campaign using this COVID-19 treatment drug. I do have Grace Nambatya. She's already here. Maybe she can acquaint us with this narrative and a lot more. A very good morning.
Good morning.
And a very good morning, Allana Kembabazi.
Good morning. Glad to be back.
Yes, of course. Grace Nambatya, would like to know more about this COVID-19 treatment drug.
Yeah, actually, it's for trial. The launch was for an official trial for quite over 2 years. We've explored this product, which hails from the communities, and it's been found quite effective. Okay, one would wonder, COVID came just recently. How do you talk about? Yeah, COVID is a virus challenge. But of course, it's not the very first virus challenge we're having. We've been having hepatitis B and other viral challenges. So we pick on those products that really have been quite good on effective on viruses, and that product featured to be the best to really to be tried on COVID, and it was quite useful informally. So normally when something is useful informally, then it has to be taken through the rigors of research. So the launch yesterday was to officially take it into trial into gazetted patients, gazetted, that is in hospital, to really get facts regarding who should use the dosage, for how long. So it's still a trial.
And even at some point, I thought I heard you wrong. Did you say it's been in the offing for 2 years, even before COVID-19?
Well, this is a community, first of all, it's a homegrown solution. It's been used in the community for over 20 years.
All right.
Yeah. It doesn't work only on viruses, it works also on others, but for viruses, it made the best fit because it was picked up on and tried out on COVID patients out there in the communities. Remember, currently there is isolation, but of course people are trying this and that. So through our search, we came out with this, and it really it was taken through preclinical testing, which normally would go over like 3 months. And then it really, it fit all science can offer to be taken through an official clinical trial.
And the information we are getting is that it's a mixture of different drugs. What kind of drugs? Break them down.
I wouldn't say drugs, these are natural products. And at this moment, I wouldn't let you know what the ingredients are, because
other countries might
it's a community product. There are issues of intellectual property rights, and we're really observing them. But trust me, the safety bit of it has been done in two, first of all, the safety through the communities has been confirmed. Safety or lack of no toxicity through laboratory studies have been carried out, and it's on that strength that, you know, having been a community-used product, it now officially fits into be it's a phase 2, according to WHO, a phase 2 product that can now be officially tested in gazetted. That means like somebody could say, how do I access it? You can't access it. If you want to access it, of course, you have to be admitted in Mulago National Referral Hospital. For you to
of course,
it.
the country released this COVID-19 treatment trial, drug trial, without actually ascertaining the number of people who are actually infected with COVID-19 in the whole country. What we are dealing with right now is targeted testing that has told us we have 39,314. So we haven't striked the mass testing initiative to ascertain what is the real number of people with COVID-19. So we would know if there are 500,000 Ugandans with COVID-19, so 500,000 people would need the treatment drug. So as it is, without knowing the actual number of COVID-19, and then this treatment drug trial in the offing, don't you think it was a shortfall on part of government?
No, not at all. First of all, testing everybody would be enormously expensive. But in any case, supposing it was possible to test everybody and they found the big numbers, no fears. This is a homegrown solution. It's a natural product, and it can be availed to whatever numbers that there would be. Yeah.
All right, Allana Kembabazi is the Manager Right to Health at the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. She has her own contestations, not on the treatment drug that was released yesterday, but on a COVID-19 vaccine that government is going to procure in May of this year. She's saying there's been no information whatsoever on this initiative. How many vaccines are we expecting? How will they be distributed? Issues of equity and so forth. Allana Kembabazi, expand more on these contestations.
Yes, thank you. So I work for the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, and we look at issues of social-economic rights in the country holistically. And COVID-19 has, as you're very well aware, disrupted everything about this country, disrupted livelihoods, disrupted the health. I mean, the healthcare system is struggling. The other time when I heard about people trying to pre-book beds and VIPs and so forth, and then Mulago pushing back, and we know that we are just completely overwhelmed.
Oxygen running out.
Oxygen has run out. The situation is bad, and I know we've been distracted by elections, but the situation is really bad.
Out.
Exactly. The health workers were talking about this other day. Ministry of Health was disagreeing. Testing, how many can afford testing? The situation is just not where it should be. And one of the things that is key, and you pointed this out, first of all, we don't even know how many Ugandans have COVID. It's likely higher. Yesterday, I saw the Ministry of Health saying about 50, and I say that's probably those who can afford to test, because not many can. So we know that we can't focus just on treatment. I applaud what they're trying to do with treatment. I think it's fantastic, but we cannot just focus on treatment. We have to look at prevention. And one of the things that has emerged is the COVID-19 vaccine is the quickest way to recovery, to relieve health systems, to economic recovery. Even Bank of Uganda calls on government to prioritize COVID-19 vaccine. I saw yesterday the president saying he's going to prioritize paying scientists more this year. That is wonderful. Vaccine should be one of the priorities. And we need to hear something about this vaccine. Now, we've had a little bit. I think at the end of the year, the president briefly mentioned Uganda may be developing a vaccine. That's why you saw that confusion. You remember when yesterday, but one, government of Uganda, Ministry of Health, tweeted, we're doing a vaccine, and they sent out, and the media also carried the story. Then it became a plasma trial, you know, and then we're like, what is happening? Ministry of Health said something, asking for money, if you remember.
Yes.
And Ugandans were asking, but this money, what are we getting it for? Like, what is happening? And they said something about AstraZeneca. Now, in the world, for low-income countries like Uganda, there's a facility set up by the WHO and the Gavi group around called COVAX, which is supposed to help us. Different countries, you know, they pull together money and buy vaccines, because vaccines have been very expensive and very competitive, to enable low-income countries to get certain amounts. So when Dr. Atwine was talking about vaccines, she was mostly talking about the allocation we'd get through COVAX. But in that allocation for equity, in that facility, no country gets more than 20%, at least initially, 20% of its population, vaccine coverage for 20% of its population. Here in Uganda, we are saying that we want to vaccinate health workers, pre-existing conditions, older persons. I mean, we're definitely going to need more than 20%. It is not sufficient. So what is the government's plan to get sufficient doses. Because to get herd immunity, to get a point where we are controlling the situation, we need at least 70% of the population.
70%?
At least
people
there.
who have
Yes.
been vaccinated?
Yes. You know, or at least I've got, you know, to get herd, that is where you're thinking herd immunity. That is where other countries are targeting.
So if you have 10 people who have been
So it
vaccinated,
doesn't help you.
yes, the
as
2 people,
much.
even if they are infected, they cannot reinfect the 10 people.
Well, those
That
are
is herd immunity.
But you see, those are, yes, ideally, but there are also other questions around that that is, and that's why we need the ministry to come and actually speak clearly about this, because they've been, this is where people ask, if I get vaccinated, does it mean I no longer have to wear a mask? Does it mean I no longer have to social distance? Actually, you need to do some of those measures until a significant percentage of the population has been vaccinated. Then you have a lot of people asking, what is happening? Yesterday, one of my colleagues was saying, I don't think I'll be vaccinated. I think they're going to try and poison us with those things. And it makes sense, because if you're not hearing your government talking to you about these issues, whatever else is circulating out there, you are prone to. So one, there is just no clear communication around this. Two, we need to prioritize, they need to tell us, are we going to get, where are we going to get these other doses? What is the plan? Are we doing one in Uganda? If so, where have we reached in trying to get a vaccine? If we are getting from other countries, who are we negotiating with? What is the price? And this price issue is going to be key, because you see that countries have been rushing to snap up these vaccines. There's been a lot of competition.
Nationalism.
Nationalism everywhere. And now you see the EU, for example, approached it as a bloc, although now it's fighting with the vaccine producers, but it approached it as a bloc. So you see that the EU, for example, South Africa is being, for the same vaccine, is being charged twice the amount that the EU is being charged. Yet South Africa is a middle-income country. Now how about us in Uganda, right? And when you want to know how much are you getting per dose, it also helps you make the case to Ugandans that, you know what, or to donors, we need this amount of money for the vaccine. We don't have those specifics. We're in the budget process right now. This is the time we should be able to say the vaccine, whatever additional doses we will need to get, you know, ideally this year or the next, we should be able to say this is the amount it will cost. And also vaccination is beyond just getting the vaccine. The whole process of it is going to cost money. So we should be seeing this reflected somewhere, some sort of costing in budget estimates. The other thing that, again, is very critical is, how will you pay for this vaccine? What is the plan? Are we going to use loans? We already saw, we are getting to close to a point where Bank of Uganda said we are nearing crisis level in terms of our debt. And there was a 21.7% increase in just 1 year in debt because of trying to deal with COVID-19. So as civil society, we strongly believe if you're going to get the money for this, it should not be debt. You should begin already negotiating with the international financial institutions. For example, the World Bank is saying it is offering loans. You should try to be negotiating for grants and making that case, and other donors, every development partner. And you should be looking, if necessary, at the consolidated fund, because vaccination of the population should be a top priority of this government. And then getting back to, there's also things that you have to do, like even if you got the vaccine here, you don't want to wait until the vaccine is here to begin putting in place things. So how far? What are the preparations we've done? You know, for example, most of these vaccines require very cold temperatures. Have we put in place cold chain requirements? I was seeing that in, I think it was in the States, where the fridge broke down and they had to quickly figure out what to do. Now that is the States. Here we have our unstable electricity. Pfizer, Moderna, which I don't think we are, there are 3 vaccines, by the way, that most people are talking about. Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. Pfizer and Moderna particularly require very cool temperatures. AstraZeneca requires at least fridge level. But even then, how will you handle that in the remote areas where we don't have power? So there are many questions here. What have you done to put that in place? How are you going, have you trained health workers? Are you going to engage village health teams? Because you also have to get people to trust you to be able to become a vaccination. So what we need to know, what is government's plan here domestically to do that? And then, because like I've said, there's been a lot of nationalism, vaccine nationalism and competition. Everyone is trying to do their own thing. We have to think through, do we need to even waive those intellectual property rights sometimes? Because if, for example, Uganda has the ability to do something here or can work with a generic company, we've seen that you can, that's what happened with HIV/AIDS. When the intellectual property provisions were waived, right, either through compulsory licensing and other legal mechanisms, and generic drugs were doing a lot of the manufacturing, then the prices of these went down. Right now, we only have the companies that have discovered the vaccines monopolizing the production. So the prices are up, the competition is up. That is why we're all just here. And I kind of sometimes think the ministry is in a tight position because it also has to wait to see, like, we are being given leftovers. Remember, Canada has bought 5 times what its population needs and has just kept it. It says after it has finished vaccinating, it will give us leftovers. So we need to begin to think proactively, but how do we navigate this? And low-income countries and middle-income countries, so South Africa, Kenya, actually went to the WTO and they said, the World Trade Organization, and they said, you people, temporarily waive these intellectual property rights. You're leaving the rest of the world behind. But we haven't seen that Uganda is supporting these things, is speaking about them, yet we are going to be screwed. I mean, that's what happened with HIV. It first went those ends, America, whatever, while people were dying here.
So
then we finally began to get
even
ARVs.
on this treatment drug, you'd actually call for
We
the
are at
waiving
risk.
of intellectual rights.
Very much so, because it should be a people's vaccine. It doesn't help you if Uganda doesn't have COVID controlled and America, because we travel. Or they come here, we go there, we do business. And again, we are collectively living through a pandemic. So if there's ever a moment where we talk about international solidarity, this is it.
And it is
also
working.
These vaccines, remember, have been invested by, they were developed after significant investment by taxpayers' monies in other countries. So Moderna, it was after the US put in a lot of money, you know. AstraZeneca as well, the UK has put in quite a bit of money. So Uganda should be joining in this call, but we should also be looking at our domestic law, right? Looking at intellectual property provisions and saying, because we do have provisions in the Industrial Property Act, for example, around compulsory licensing, where we recognize that in an emergency, we may need to waive these provisions. But we have to look again and say, are these sufficient? Do we need to buff them up, you know? So again, this cannot be approached by just a health perspective. You need to be, everyone has to be cutting at it from different perspectives. It's a very important issue. And I think that what we need to see from the government, first of all, clear communication about this. Not this business of mixing it up with plasma or telling us about this or dropping a tweet here, then there's scandal. Remember how we first heard about it? The Chinese were asking for a vaccine for their workers. Then Ugandans saw the leaked letter. Then they began shouting. That's when we first heard
I hear
about
what you're
vaccine.
saying on partnerships,
So, clear
Allana
communication.
Kembabazi, because it is working. Sanofi did not produce the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, but we saw them strike a deal with Pfizer-BioNTech to actually produce vials that they can use to mass distribute. They're not going to produce, but they're going to help them distribute the vaccine.
And maybe just to add on that, to clarify, so the WHO, for example, has told these companies there's a COVID-19 technology access pool. It has said to these companies developing the vaccine, share your know-how, join us in this pool. In that pool, there are already generic companies that are ready to go and do this if they get the know-how.
Grace,
but no one has shared that.
Is there a possibility of waiving these intellectual rights, or you know, so that we can ably work together?
I wouldn't want to talk for the Ministry of Health because I'm not the spokesperson for the ministry. But Ministry of Health is just in one leg here. And the Permanent Secretary's office is already Why simply not working there?
We have
find
asked.
out because they can't deny you information. Yeah, I've really had the discussion. But for me, I think I would walk into the ministry and ask for information, and they would give it to you.
I disagree, because the ordinary Ugandan is not going to walk into the ministry.
No,
like I can walk in the ministry, and I do.
Grace Nambatya, that means even the internet shutdown did more harm than good, because the updates that we expected from Ministry of Health were not coming through.
When I listen in, because really, first of all, a lot is happening in the ministry.
Go ahead.
I'm from the same Ministry of Health, and when I talk about the product that was launched yesterday, it's part of 23 projects that are under Presidential Scientific Initiative, one of which is making vaccines. And there was an update regarding to where Uganda is.
Sorry, when was this update?
The update was yesterday, because this was an official launch. But I wouldn't think that Ugandans all have TVs to watch or whatever. I don't want to talk for the ministry, because there is somebody who talks for the ministry. But I was listening in, and like...
I talked to Anabiona, but it was like Grace is more conversant with this
No,
issue.
the thing is, really, if I am leading an organization, for me, I believe, like, I want to inform, like we are here on NTV. It's only fair. I go to the ministry, I pick the latest information, and then I communicate it. That's how I'm feeling, because now I'm talking as like part of ministry, but heading a docket of research, but not officially talking for the ministry. But as far as I'm concerned, all I know, We were updated on the efforts for Uganda. And when I listen in on what's coming in the media, Tanzania here is sending negative messages.
Yes,
You're questioning, so you pity the listener. They're listening in, President Magufuli saying, Africa, be careful about this, which is really also, it has its
Yeah,
fair...
there are so many funerals
Yeah,
in
because,
Tanzania,
and even if you talk to me, I mean, for me, what I'm trying to say, to really to help a listener where not everybody is watching one TV or whatever, just get authentic information, and then communicate according. Because I think the ministry, those questions, I can't now answer them here, but I know the answers are there.
Let's focus on the treatment drug.
No, I don't.
Treatment drug,
I will not touch.
We go on
Grace, let's focus on the treatment drug. The testing is being charged by individual, so we want to know when this treatment drug is in the offing, will Ugandans be charged for treatment?
Wow. Okay. The treatment, yeah, it will be charged, but it will be charged very, very fairly because it's a homegrown solution. Yeah, and the whole country capacity is going to be built to engage, especially the youth, to engage in generating these raw materials, in processing. In fact, most of what is enshrined in Vision 2040, engage youth, use ICT for communication, value addition, all is going to be part of generating this product. So it will be very, very affordable, and part of mechanisms to make it has been addressed through getting us state-of-the-art equipment. All these things were shared out yesterday in the launch. And I believe the papers have written about it now. So, and the beauty of this product, it's actually, it can be two-pronged. Yesterday we talked about it as a therapeutic, but in future you'll hear of it as one that can be an immunobooster. Yeah, because it has ways of strengthening the body immunity in a sense that if a dose is very low, because communities still use it in that regard, you find that probably you don't even go down with such viral challenges, because proof has shown in the communities that those who use it as food, because it's almost like food, they may not succumb easily to this. But I can't go in that area because I know it must be scientifically also talked about.
Yes, Grace Nambatya, it has also been proven that not so many people were able to pay for these COVID-19 tests, and we are worried that they might not be able to pay for this COVID-19 treatment in that regard, and then it might dampen our fight against COVID-19.
I think it's a matter of being patient, because like yesterday when you saw that function, whoever was at that function, okay, there is some provision of free tests in Molago there, because actually I learned of it and realized that regularly one can go in and take one, because there are issues like attaining that function. You must have had a COVID test that was negative. But sometimes I alerted, like I contacted some people, do you want to attend this function? Password is have a COVID test. I don't want. You know, our Ugandans, don't think they are so eager, but slow and steady, I think that can come by. Challenge is to probably politicize everything or whatever, but I know we're not a very rich country, but as a poor resource sort of, slow but steady, probably the tests will go down, and I don't know. We can't expect everything to happen in one day.
Allana Kembabazi, you wanted to submit your contestation.
Yeah, so one, just hearing what she said, I think with the cost question you're asking is very key, because even for the trial, I think it should be free as the pandemic is raging, because you want to first control things. You can talk about prices when you've controlled, which is what we did for a lot of things in this country. But let me move away from that, because again,
what I can say, because I'm the principal investigator, actually I'm heading the team on the product side. We have a principal investigator on the treatment side. Like, say tomorrow, if the trial, is over and this product, to a certain extent, it can be free, and then eventually, it goes out, especially to people who just want to keep strong immunity. Those can purchase because you could just purchase a sample. Supposing I say a sample that can keep you for a month costs 3,000. That is really good because currently natural products are very expensive because they are a preserve of the few. They've not been validated. But since government effort has been put in, government has put in money, definitely there is a level to which you can say that
should be free.
That would be great, Grace Nambatya, because what we've seen, according to the evidence, is that even some people were unable to even adhere to the standard operating procedures, not because they did not want to, but some people did not have soap for hand washing. Some people could not even afford water. So if you're talking about even 3,000 for a COVID-19 treatment drug, it would be too much money for some sections
Don't worry.
of
When the time comes, when the time comes, I've heard what you're saying.
Indeed.
When the time comes, we shall see.
It will be made free.
And you consult with communities. But
So,
I want to get back to respond to some of the things you say.
Yeah.
First of all, I disagree. The tests, the idea that you walk into Mulago and you just get free tests or whatever, my friends that have gone there with symptoms have faced issues. So the reality on the ground might be different depending on who you are and sort of where you're at. But I want to respond to what you said about the ministry is probably doing these things behind the scenes. You see, we need to see, the country needs to hear from its leadership on this. Why did some of us take COVID seriously, right? Because the president went up there, the ministry went there, and they gave us credible information. So when we got those messages on WhatsApp or wherever from our aunties telling us it is a conspiracy of the Chinese, we were already getting accurate information. Number two, a number of these processes should have, like I've said, should have started. If you're saying you're going to need money from Uganda at any point for this vaccine, we should not just hear about it sneaked into some sort of supplementary. We're in the budget process right now, right? Number three, the lack of community participation in this COVID response has been a glaring sort of failure. Because I think that you still have Ugandans today that think COVID is not real. And why is that? Because you have to think about who the messengers are. We already have structures at the local level, village health teams. To what extent you began to involve them later when you came up with a community engagement strategy in October? I don't even know if it's fully implemented yet. So with the vaccine, we are going to need to have done that. You want to engage and consult, like I said, civil society, lawyers, because there are different elements to this. She's, for example, saying, I don't know about compulsory licensing, and as lawyers, we are saying, well, we need to look into maximizing all our TRIPS flexibilities, right?
Yes.
Health workers will tell you this idea of starting here and there may not work in this area. So on this task force, beyond the usual suspects we have, we should also see lawyers, health workers, community representatives. We should really have
people
that voice.
In the non-sciences.
You know, people that are representing the different elements of this equation. Like I said, it is you're going to have strong community engagement, legal, you're going to have the public health.
Do you think that is the missing link, Allana Kembabazi? Because we did have a government institute, a presidential circle of advisors, scientists, Dr. Monica Musenero, presidential advisor on epidemics and pandemics, but then we didn't see any lawyers, any journalists, psychologists, sociologists being put together, people who deal with behavioral change, people who would compel members of the public to change their style of living so that they could adhere to the SOPs.
I completely agree that even community voices, and you know, participation is a key right in our constitution because we recognize that it is very central to how we govern, right? And it builds more public confidence and also access to information. Credible, timely access to information is what we actually want. And finally, we've heard them say in passing that they will involve the private sector. Now, we've seen what has happened with testing and treatment, where outsourcing in the private sector resulted in very high costs for testing. And now even with treatment, you hear costs that scare you of the amount per ICU. And again, you're trying to curb this. So how do you make sure, right, that government is remaining at the center of this vaccination process, that Ugandans are able to access the vaccine for free? And I want to underscore that. And that if you're going to begin using any sort of partner, whether it's private or whatever, you're strictly regulating them. You're making sure they can meet the cold chain requirements. They're going to handle the vaccine properly. You're going to make sure they're not going to cut corners and double deal, because the testing experience in this country has been so problematic. The moment government lost control of it, the prices, even in government facilities these days, you find someone tells you, give me some money here and I'll get you your results quicker, which is impeding our fight. So we need to see, just to reiterate, strong communication from this government, participation, a real effort to have participation, a real effort to look at how do we make sure that we are looking at the intellectual property issues and pushing for them to be waived, whether at the international level or even here looking at our own laws again. We are regulating the private sector or making sure whatever happens, government has strong stewardship about it. and that we are not going to have loans. We need to strongly think about the way we are going to finance this. We are begging you as civil society, do not take on further loans. It only undermines us. So I think when we begin to, we hope this is a conversation that is starting. For us, our starting point was, we cannot continue to see this confusion. Because the Ugandans who said, yes, we have a vaccine, to hear, now it's a trial, but is COVID real? You know, it is skyrocketing. And I think we need to get back to this COVID situation. It's like we put it on the side. It became elections first, other things, and now, yet people have been dying, and they continue to die. And the ones that die unaccounted for, the poor, the vulnerable, are the ones that, if we're not thinking about the lessons we have learned by now, we are going to repeat them
so
as we are going into COVID
are
vaccine.
Dying, and your biggest worry right now is that even when the treatment drug is actually put out there,
or the
rich
vaccine,
people might
they
clamor
will
for
still
it.
be left out if we are not taking stock of this situation and saying, how is there equitable distribution of whether it's drugs or vaccine? How are we prioritizing the most vulnerable? And how are we consulting? Because if you don't consult, people have different amounts of information. If you come and you speak and you give a briefing and you go, and you're not consulting. You know, sometime back the Ministry of Health did that survey on COVID. Did we get the results? Did you remember? But it was also mostly online. I don't know if they took it offline. She would know. But did we get the results? Because it was asking different things. For example, do you wear a mask? Why don't you wear a mask? Like now we should be asking, will you take a vaccine if we give it? Will you take it if it's for free? As in, we need to see movement. You don't just wake up and then you're like, oh yeah, we're going to vaccine. I understand if they're working on something, they want to keep it secret. But in terms of public confidence right now, it is at a very it's an all-time low in this government's management of COVID. And yet they're going to need that public confidence to get people to take the vaccine, because it doesn't help her if she takes the vaccine and the rest of us sit there, either we can't get it or we refuse. We will not control
behavioral
COVID.
change.
And the situation, you know, people are struggling financially because we cannot continue to live like
Grace
this.
Nambatya, what is the plan from the ministry for behavioral change so that when this treatment trial is officially released into the community, people actually accept it? Because you do have some people in other countries who are saying we shall not be taking these vaccines because of their own conspiracy theories.
Okay, maybe what I'm appreciating from Madam Babazi, you know, is the fact that there should be better ways of, like you've said, communication. When I was coming on this program, I called Dr. Musenero, Monica, and I know she's watching.
And she's watching.
Yeah, and she takes note. Yeah, sometimes probably when you don't know what's not been probably going fine, now that she's taking note, I know she will contact those concerned.
Indeed, I talked to her yesterday. She'll be here on Monday to give us more information.
Some of these issues of like stakeholder engagement has budgetary implications. And sometimes, as you know,
not always.
Go ahead, Grace.
But
no,
we can talk about that as
you want the right, you know, stakeholder engagement. First of all, you need to identify the focal groups, engage them, not once, not twice. I'm an accounting officer in the ministry. I know when you want to do it properly, even if it means
at the village level, let's give an example.
Yes, at the village level, still you need to
You
know.
have a Secretary of Health, you have PhD.
You finish, Grace.
Yeah, like now we've been in election period. Sometimes you may not, you know, it may not be clear who is in the leadership or whatever. Yeah, releases of funds. I think some funds were frozen, you know, for some period. I mean, activities were frozen, you know, because cash flows. Yeah, because there is nothing you can hardly do without resources, even if you have to conduct a Zoom, that kind of thing. But what I can say is that I know officers in the ministry, like leaders or whatever, have TVs in their offices, and I believe they are watching.
Of course, they are watching.
I agree with you, the gaps, and actually thank you for pointing them out. And I know that really, for a good leader, when you listen in like this, then you can put something right. Yeah. Though I still also say that getting in there, also chipping in and finding out more can also be useful.
And we did, but the thing is, I have to speak for the Ugandans who are going either on your website, waiting on TV, because a lot of time we will have inside information because we are partners in the ministry. But what I'm trying to say to you is that credible information has to be disseminated to the public. There has to be that consultation with
And now
the public.
that you've told me up front and I said I'm a PI this product, for me I've captured. We're still in planning phases because after the launch yesterday, it's a journey beginning. Yeah, for me I'll capture like, because at the launch, stakeholders owning the product who are part of the audience, representing a bigger community out there.
All right, we've talked about the challenges, Grace and Nambatya, but what kind of help do you need to be able to execute your work very, very well? So that this treatment drug gets onto well, gets into the members of the public.
And your other vaccine work.
Actually, currently, we've already presented it to government that OSHA needs production facilities.
Right.
Because these are products which you may need probably to engage National Bureau of Standards.
Yes.
And it's not very easy to get a community product, take it through all the processes to pass quality assurance issues. So we've put in place a business plan that will ensure that if I'm growing, say it's a plant that's an ingredient, my neighbor is not spraying something dangerous, that's a big challenge because as long as one sector is not regulated, then there are issues, big challenges. I might maybe want to access a particular herb from a certain forest and tomorrow the forest is no more. Somebody has removed it, grown eucalyptus. That's a very big challenge where people just place like plant an industry here, no organization. Yeah, that is really a challenge, a big challenge. And also pricing.
So I have a question. Do you think that Traditional Medicine and Complementary Act does help sort of prevent those, or is it the business and human? We need stronger regulation of some of these investors as well on this issue.
But at the moment, it's not yet implemented. It was assented to just in September, so we still have a challenge of supporting our minister to implement it. And implementation alone requires things like setting up an office in the Ministry of Health. It's a whole system, and it's a budgetary issue, where if you didn't plan for it in the previous financial year, you may find that it's not catered for, and you are held back, but you are here making a product.
Right.
So we're thinking through how do we get over that, because you need that network, because we already have a public-private partnerships for health policy, which was put
but it contravenes the Public-Private Partnerships Act.
But before Allana Kembabazi disrupted you were talking about pricing.
Yeah, pricing is a challenge. In this country, you find one product at maybe 20,000 and somebody else is selling it at 200,000, and this is a lot in the natural product sector. Yeah, where you think, okay, it's homegrown, should be very cheap. But because somebody would say, I struggled on my own because they're not supported, probably, because we have Ministry of Science, Innovation and Technology, which is supposed to support people in Juakari, but most of the things have not yet really picked up. Yeah, so you find one may miss out in that regard because of overpricing may make it as good as not available.
I hear you. Allana Kembabazi, what does government need to do and the Ministry of Health to ensure that this treatment drug of COVID-19 is a success, and also the procurement and rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine in May becomes a success? What do they have to do?
One, they should ensure that they're free, both the drug and the vaccine, at least until we contain this pandemic.
Right.
All hands on deck, we should be having that idea, right? But number two, like she said, the issue of regulation will be key. She's talking about the fact that they need to strengthen regulation in the sector for this kind of work to get off. And for us, we're saying it as well, even with vaccines, particularly as you think about if the private sector is going to be involved and so forth, the regulation in terms of the other actors in health beyond the ministry has to be key, because we're talking about a fundamental human right here, not just business as usual. So that must always be kept key. Three, access to timely information. And to citizens, it's, we can do access to information requests as lawyers, but we need the citizens to have this information for it to be credible. Number four, the issue of financing. Like I said, I don't think this should be through loans, so we need to begin to think through whether partners or donors. And number five, for the vaccine, and even for some of this medicine, you're going to have to think through how your way, if for just intellectual property rights have often impeded access. People saying, I worked on this, I want it as a patent. People think it spurs innovation, but actually, the research has shown over time that they impede access to medicines. So we have to begin to think through
inclusive research.
First of all, as joining the call other countries are making on a people's vaccine and making sure that people recognize we as Africans, as Ugandans, we should not wait for leftovers. We also deserve to live. And that our law here should look at compulsory licensing and other provisions. How are we using there are legal mechanisms called TRIPS flexibilities that allow you to temporarily waive some of these issues. Are we maximizing that? And the last bit, which is I think ties all this together, is having a multi-sectoral approach to this, and this should be reflected in the task force around these issues. We need community voices on, we need civil society. I keep underscoring the importance of community engagement, because without it, these things are not going to take off.
And that's why it was so hard to persuade people to work there.
Exactly, health workers, who are the frontline workers, who will tell you, because they intervene with patients a lot and all of that. And generally just thinking through, we need to see the preparation that is happening. We know the constraints of our country, so we cannot, if we don't begin preparing now, the most vulnerable will be left out. The person on Sigulu Islands or Karamoja without the bits in Amdat without electricity, those are the ones who will suffer if we haven't figured out how to maintain cold storage and the rest. So we hope government heeds our call and comes out to engage and to give answers. Okay,
Grace Nambatya, with the release of this COVID-19 treatment drug, what challenges do you hope to encounter along the way during this phase of trials?
Okay, actually, the trial beginning is at small level, and it will grow into a bigger one. And trials don't end very fast. So I see this growing into like taking like even 12 months.
Trials are taking 12 months?
No, the beginning, you can say maybe 3 months you may get those tentative results, but this was like 124 is a very small number, you know. So you need to grow it into a bigger one and a bigger one. And of course, numbers would really influence decisions, but the challenge would be to produce for big numbers, and free, to produce for big numbers and to give it out for free. That would be a challenge, but let's see how it goes, how government can support it all the way through.
All right, we do have some breaking news. I'd like to link straight to Stephen Mbide. That is Royal Farm Eaters caught fire. Stephen Mbide has all the details. A very good morning, sir. What is the latest?
Yes, good morning to you, Romeo. We're coming to you from Kyambogo, and this is at the home of Royal Farm Mattresses Limited. But as you can see from my background, the firefighters from the Uganda Fire and Rescue Services Division of the Uganda Police is on ground trying to put off the fire. This fire broke out around 3:20 a.m. and up to now the firefighters are trying to put off this fire. But at least for now, we know that mattresses, the spring and foam mattresses have already been gutted by fire, and other machines here at the Royal Farm Mattresses in Kyambogo. It's just opposite the main entrance of Kyambogo University. This is where you find this mattress factory. But the officials of this place have not yet been able to speak to me, because they are trying to assess the extent of the damage. But at least for now, we know that property worth billions of money has been lost in this fire, and these officers here across the entire place are trying to make sure they do their best to make sure they put out the fire. Naye kati kansooke njogereko ne Haji ono. Haji, mbala mulwanyisa omuliro. Omuliro guno gwatandise gutya, biki ebyononekeddwa wano eno?
Ebyononekeddwa bingi nnyo, toyinza na biyitirivu kwesika ojjudde, naye tetumanyi bulungi budde ki lwakoze eki, gwatandise kiro, tetumanyi ki lwavudde.
Kakati mu byononekeddwa tumanyi mulimu enfaliso na bintu biki ebirala by'omanyi? So for now
mulimu engoye, mulimu machine, mulimu engoye, mulimu mattress covers, machine, byonna byakoze eki, byonna bigenze biyitirivu nnyo.
Okay, he's telling me that their dresses, their mattresses, their mattress covers, pillows, and so many other property. But for now, the commandant of the Uganda Police Fire and Rescue Services is on the way. He has told me that in 5 or 10 minutes he'll be here to let me know what exactly. But where you see that fire officer trying to put out the fire from is the back side of this Royal Foam mattresses. But at the front gate, the police and owners of this building are not allowing anyone to access, because that is where the too much fire is coming in from at this particular point. But for now, that is what they are trying to do, to make sure they put out the fire. But you can see there are stretches on the perimeter wall, which could easily break for now. But this is what I can update you for now, Romeo Busiku. I'll be giving you much more updates as they unfold here at Chambogo Royal Foam.
That's my brother Stephen Mbide giving us the latest updates on the fire that gutted Royal Foam Mattresses Company. That is a very unfortunate incident that has just unfolded. But we are still here with Allana Kembabazi, Grace Nambatya, to expound more on the COVID-19 treatment drug that was released yesterday at Mulago by the President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni after his scientists who have been working on this for the last 8 months. But then Grace tells me it has been worked on for the last 2 years. Yeah, that is new information. But then we would like to know, Allana Kembabazi, without community engagement, without free rollout of this COVID-19 treatment drug or vaccine, do you think it is possible to lose the COVID-19 fight because of these factors?
Yeah, I think those two. And even right now we are seeing it. The testing and treatment experience is showing that with these things being charged for at relatively high costs, people are not accessing them. And without community engagement, you have people saying, wearing a mask makes you sick. There is no COVID. There is, as in, so those two, exactly. You know, those two are I think, the key things that we are missing in our fight here. And then data. You mentioned the issue of data as well. And I want to bring that for the vaccine because I forgot to mention it earlier. They've talked about, you know, they're going to prioritize health workers, older persons. Do you have that data? Now, for example, older persons, we know have
how many are sick?
But also, how many older persons are there? Because, for example, older persons have lacked national IDs and they fail to access SAGE because they do not have national IDs. So now with the vaccine, you're going to need data. So you need to make sure if the older persons, they're already prioritizing getting them national IDs. You need to know how many health workers are there, how many people maybe may have pre-existing conditions or whatever, you know. And so I think that and she's going to also need to be able to know the full extent of how many people in Uganda, like what is our
testing.
Yes, what is our burden here? Because we don't know. When you hear 50 tests a day and you're telling us we're in stage 4, did we miraculously leave stage 4 at some point in like a week? What is happening? It's a black hole right now. And then the issue, like we've said, of regulation, which is very key. If you have other players, if you have the private sector, you have to regulate. Government must always remain at the center of this to ensure whatever it's doing, it reaches the person down there. And it is equitable. And without thinking through some of those things and giving us the information as stakeholders, because she talked about a number of challenges. For example, I had no idea that all this time we have these medicines, but then the Traditional and Complementary Medicines Act had not come into place. Some of us would have been shouting a lot more about the act had we known some of these things. Now, when it comes to vaccines, it's the same thing. Some of us are advocating at different levels. And I had the UK, for example, with the vaccine say, you don't have to waive intellectual property rights. It is not necessarily proven that people will die if we keep these patents in place and prices stay high. Ugandans should be like, are you crazy? Did you not see our HIV/AIDS experience? So government, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they should be all engaging on that issue. But even us, if we know that, yes, Uganda is in support of this, Uganda can even probably do some thing here on the ground. If we do have compulsory licenses and waive these intellectual property rights, we have capacity here. A lot more people can be shouting about this. So how do you engage us and make sure that, because fighting COVID-19 is not going to just take the scientists. It's going to take us, you know, different disciplines, different people, and it's going to take us under government's stewardship and leadership, really all taking place in this fight. So we have to see that very strong government stewardship and leadership, which we used to see in the beginning. You know, Acheng was the hero of everyone, but we need to see it again. It has just fallen by the
Grace
wayside.
Nambatya, do you think the fight against COVID-19 would have been different if people in the non-sciences had been involved at the earlier stage? The journalists, the psychologists, the lawyers, and so forth, to help in the implementation of standard operating procedures. In that, as the scientists work on a vaccine, yes, these people on the other side are calling on people to actually adhere to the SOPs, the missing link.
Definitely. Yeah, it's like when you talk about health is one health, and everybody is very important. I think as a country we had a challenge of compartmentalization, even in academia. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and some of what the COVID era has brought forth is bringing out that glaringly challenges of such divides. Like for researchers now, you see we've been able to come together, different fraternity. So in this fight, everybody is very, very important, and it's good that such a program is bringing it out. It was a disease, call it a disease, which needs to be cured once you point it out. So it's been pointed out here. I've already tested it, that reason we were not moving much as a country, a medical was on one side, Harbour was on this side. Yeah, now actually I'm getting now to know my colleague here, Madam Babazi, and I'm one person who has been putting my neck on the front line to demand for traditional medicine moving.
That's amazing.
And now that I know you, I will engage you, and you know, coming together. That's COVID has brought in some of such good things. So pointing them out is very, very important. I mean, you need to know history to be able to do good science. So there is no way you can say this one is not important.
Of course.
We need each
And
other.
then, Allana, you have to laud the central government, you have to laud the Minister of Health for having worked so hard around the clock to actually come up with the COVID-19 treatment. So many countries have not been so lucky.
I'm excited about it, but again, I want, you know, it is the confusion that came when they were now, first of all, they're announcing that just showed how everything runs.
Yes.
We have a vaccine. I was like, wait, we have a vaccine, yes. You know, and then that. And then again, the same effort they put on treatment. And I've said this, treatment will only go so far. We're already overwhelmed. You need to focus on prevention right now to alleviate that pressure. So we need to see strong effort on the vaccine, and we need to have you people get it together, please, government. Clear, consistent communication. We cannot afford to lose people's confidence. It's already gone to rock bottom, and we have to make sure that we are engaging them and that we are thinking through the human rights issues here, because I keep saying this, health is a human right, which means regardless of your ability to pay, it is a fundamental human right. So it's not business as usual. So as we are doing these things to make sure that we are safeguarding it as a human right, we are going to need different players on board. We are going to need consistent access to information, and we're going to need participation, because participation helps keep people accountable. If you hear that this amount of money has been allocated for the vaccine, and you know how much per dose, and you know you're tracking, so that even if someone tries to do something elsewhere, you're tracking the process. But if it's done all in the dark with the corruption we have in this country.
Very insightful conversation with Allana Kembabazi and Dr. Grace Nambatya. Give us your parting shots, Grace. What will the next 6 months in this fight of COVID-19 look like?
Let me hope we shall work together better, because there are even more things.
I'm glad you agree we need to work together.
Yeah, nutrition has not come in the picture. What happens when somebody is discharged? We've seen people discharged and they're down again, because COVID is so unique in a sense that it doesn't mean that you've had it and you have immunity. You can come down with it again. So for me, I see also a missing bit of nutrition. So there are many other missing bits. So we need to learn to work together. And for the educationists, if they're listening in, to educate people from the word go, to know that we are one body. You cannot say my eye is sore, the nose, it doesn't matter. So, you know, so we should think as one body. But I think it's a cancer of the education system which has to be picked up.
Grace Nambatya and Allana Kembabazi, many thanks for having made the time to speak to NTV Uganda on such an insightful conversation. Of course, it's been agreed people in the sciences and non-sciences need to expedite a great working relationship to be able to fight off COVID-19 in its entirety. Let's go to Entebbe and talk to our reporter, Ivan Wolonyolo. He's going to be having a very insightful conversation on NRM leaning independents and their contestations in the just concluded Entebbe municipality mayoral race. Here's more.